Welcome to Liar Liar, Deception and Interpersonal Communication. This is part 2 in our 3-part video series. The goal of this particular video is to understand deception. So what is the nature of interpersonal deception? One way to tackle it is to think about why we deceive people. Here are a few of the reasons that we may make the decision to lie. Number one, of course, is to gain benefits. It's very rare that we're going to lie in a way that doesn't actually benefit us. The second reason might surprise you, but it's to get to know someone. Think about the number of times that somebody might ask you a question like, "Do you like Jane Austen?" And you lie and say, "Yes, you do," because you want to continue the conversation and get to know them better. The third is to protect our own privacy. Sometimes people ask us questions that we feel are too private or inappropriate, and rather than point out the fact that it was an inappropriate question, we lie and protect ourselves. The fourth is to avoid conflict. We don't want to necessarily tell somebody something that will make them upset, so we simply tell what we consider to be a small, harmful white lie. The next one is to look better to others. When we look at online communication in particular, we see that everybody's trying to put their best face forward. Sometimes that best face is also not a true face. Then, of course, we want to lie to avoid consequences. So if you get stopped for speeding, you might lie to the officer in order to get out of a ticket. The final one is to avoid distress. If we know something is going to cause somebody else distress, we avoid that by telling them a lie. Deception and politeness theory go hand in hand. Think about the number of times we lie to help somebody else save face. So politeness and liking are linked together, and face and liking are linked together. So you might tell somebody that you like a skirt, or that you liked a movie, or that you like their cooking, all in order to make sure that they like you back. Now, the flip side is true as well. Because we consider it rude to question somebody's veracity, we might not question people who we know are lying. If you've ever been in a conversation with someone where you were pretty sure they were telling a tall tale, think about it. Did you call them out on it? If you didn't, it was probably part of politeness theory. You thought it would be rude or impolite to question what they were saying, even though you didn't necessarily believe it to be true. The author John Sonson once said that Facebook is where you lie to your friends and Twitter is where you tell the truth to strangers. I would add Instagram to this because I think many times we use an online environment as a place to put our best selves forward and stretch that maybe into deception. Let's take a look at deception online. We know that there are 3 areas where people deceive most often. Number one is personality. In an online environment, you have the opportunity to craft a personality that might be somewhat different from the one that you have when you're face to face with someone. So you might create a portrait of yourself as more outgoing, as more adventurous, when maybe that's not your real personality. The second, of course, is photographs, and this is why I think Instagram is a big piece of this. In an online environment, we now have the ability to alter all photographs. Once upon a time, it was believed that a picture could tell 1,000 words. But now, our pictures really can be easily changed in order to create a false perception of how we look or what we did. So consider carefully when you're altering a photograph, whether you're using a filter or you're clipping something out through cropping or any other means, you're actually creating a sense of deception. Finally, interestingly enough, people have a tendency to lie about gender online. We see this more and more frequently. This is a very interesting lie, and it does beg a lot of questions about why people are so interested in gender swapping online. Gender, of course, as we've learned, is a cultural concept. So the fact that when people are free from their physical bodies, they consider swapping genders is something that would be interesting to study. Now let's look at deception in online dating. We know that that happens all the time. For men and women, though, deception is a bit different. So for women, they tend to lie about things like their age, their weight, and their appearance. Men, on the other hand, lie about their education level, their income, their height, their age, and their marital status. Marital status being one of the most troubling ones because we would consider that to be a middle or high stakes lie. Here are a few facts about online deception. Number one, The more deceptive a dater's profile is, the less likely they are to use the pronoun I. One of the theories behind this is that the further away from a person's actual self their profile gets, the less they feel like it represents them. And that means they're less likely to use that pronoun that refers back to themselves. A second interesting fact is that liars tend to write shorter self descriptions in their profiles. So I guess it's a case of keep it simple if you're going to lie. A third fact is that lying about appearance happens whenever people talk more about work-life achievements. So if somebody's going to make sure you're not focused on what they look like and tell lies there, they're going to try and put the emphasis more on other places where they've been successful. Theoretically, this is because if you do find out about the appearance, that you're still going to be interested in them based on these other achievements. When we look further into online dating, we realize that studies show most people engage in some type of deception. In a study of 78 different profiles, they found that 80% of the people lied to some degree on their profiles. Weight was the number one thing that people lied about. Women shed about 8.5 pounds on their online dating profile. Men shed about 1.5 pounds. Half of the people on the online dating site lied about their height, and 20% lied about their age. So the bottom line is that lying is pretty rampant in online dating, which is surprising given how successful online dating is as a form of meeting other people. It could be that there is an expectation that people are lying online, and so we're a little bit more forgiving when we meet them in person. So what are some of the types of deception that we engage in? Well, falsification is the communication of false information, but it's only one type of lie. Exaggeration is another type of deception. This is where we overstate something. So, for example, when somebody is exaggerating their income in an online dating profile. Omission is when we leave things out. So, if you're on an online dating profile and somebody leaves out the fact that they have a family or a spouse at home, that's lying by omission. Equivocation is creating an ambiguous sense of information so that somebody has to read between the lines. It's designed to create a false impression, and that's what makes it a deception. It's probably the hardest one for people to catch. And it's the easiest for people to say, well, I didn't really mean to lie. Motivation impairment theory argues that the more motivated you are to succeed in a high-stake lie, the easier it should be to catch you in that lie because your nonverbal performance will make the lie less believable. So you're going to tend to act more guilty the higher stakes the lie is. Interpersonal deception theory argues, however, that skilled liars can detect suspicion and then adapt their behavior to appear more honest. So if I'm used to lying on a regular basis and I can tell when you're starting to get suspicious, I can change my behavior accordingly. So hopefully now you understand a little bit better the nature of deception and why it's not as straightforward as we always think. That's part 2 of Liar Liar, Deception and Interpersonal Communication. Join us for part 3 to see if you can detect a liar.